Guys, I wanted to talk to you about 3 different types of articles that you might find in your search for the different articles for your paper. So this first article here, interest as the missing motivator in self-regulation. This is our theory paper. This is a review of studies, basically. So here's the abstract, and here is the literature review. They are not going to have methods or results because they did not study anything specifically. If you notice, I'm scrolling through and there is no indication of any methods. They didn't collect actual data. Okay, they did research by using other articles and their findings, but they didn't collect actual data. Now, their models that they propose are not studied yet. At this point, this is their proposal. This is their theory. And people can use this specific theory as a framework for their study. But this article specifically is just arguing for this particular model, okay? So the model is basically how these people think these different topics relate to one another, and they're called constructs. So how they think the construct of interest is going to fit into the self-regulation model that exists already. So they're proposing basically an adjustment to this self-regulation theory. So for your paper, this is not going to be something that you're going to use. This type of article is not something that you're going to use as a citation, except you could find different articles within this article. So let's say you're reading this and you come across a citation that you think is particularly interesting. Like, for example, okay, so this is self-determination theory. Okay, so they proposed this. What were findings that I can find off of here? Okay. Experiences of interest can become the more proximal motivator for persistence and subsequent engagement, particularly for activities that take place over the long term. Okay, so maybe that's what these people found. So let's say I want to cite that. So I say, oh, well, this Horowitz, Barron, and Elliott, 1998, sounds interesting. So I will go to their reference page, and here we go. Horowitz, let's see, Barron, and Elliott, 1998. So rethinking achievement goals. When are they adaptive for college students and why? So this sounds like something that could potentially be something I would cite. So if I go there and see that they actually did a study, then I could cite their findings. So that's how you would use this type of review/theory proposing article. Okay. So secondly, this is going to be one of the types of articles you mainly use. And this is just an article with an actual sample and results and conclusions based upon like different samples. So self-efficacy and interest, experimental studies of optimal incompetence. And this is by Paul Sylvia, who is a very interesting writer. I really enjoy reading his papers. So he has the abstract, the introduction, and then the literature review. Okay, you're going to be writing the introduction and literature review all at once. So the introduction is the beginning of your literature review, and it's going to just set up the problem and explain what you're going to look for, what you're going to, your thesis statement, right? So, and then here's your literature review portion, and then he talks about the present studies, okay? Here's the thing, the present experiments. So, he's doing multiple experiments. So here is the first experiment. talks about the participants in the design, talks about the procedure, then the results and discussion. Alright, so he's got this set up just like you guys are going to have to start setting yours up. Just take note that this is not APA style. This is not how you're supposed to do APA style headings, so do not replicate the ones you see in articles. They are not always correct. And most of the time they're not correct, because a lot of times you'll see columns. Okay, so that was experiment 1, this is experiment 2. In your literature matrix, you can enter these specific experiments on different lines. They're going to find different things, they're going to have different samples. So enter them on different lines. You can obviously you'll have to use the same APA citation, but it's going to be in this case the same type of framework. So they use the same literature review for this. They didn't add anything. They just did a different study. So you have to enter these on different lines because they're technically different studies. It's still only one citation. Okay? You're still only going to be able to use this as one of your sources, but you'll enter it twice in your literature matrix to help differentiate these findings. Now, the third type of article that you could come across as you're searching for your 6 sources is a meta-analysis. So the relation of self-efficacy and interests, a meta-analysis of 60 samples. So what does that tell you? They're not going to collect data from 60 different samples. That's so expensive that's not what they're going to do. They actually look at studies that have already been done, so they're collecting journal articles. And they're collecting articles that are going to be including these 2 constructs, self-efficacy and interest, and they're going to be looking at correlations between these. So they conducted a meta-analytic review. So you have the regular review that is posing a theory and is still going over studies, but the studies aren't going to be all focusing on the same thing. But then you have 60 empirical independent samples. This is the number of participants in the entire group of the 60 studies, the 60 samples. Okay, so in which relations between self-efficacy and interest have been examined. 53 of these included parallel measures. So the measures can be compared because they're similar, like the SAT is similar to the ACT. And then you're going to have the remainder of the samples that are not parallel, right? So if you look through this article though, okay, so they have all of the same or similar stuff. They have a section on methodological issues because of possible differences between the way these constructs were defined and used within a study. Okay? So they're trying to link these articles together based upon how they were defined, how they were studied, what was used, etc. But in this, they still have, what's interesting is in the first review, they didn't have a method. Remember, it was just a theory. In this one, they do, because their method was actually reviewing literature. So they have to talk about how they decided to look at these studies. So they did a computer search through this this database using specific keywords. They wrote down their keywords. A manual search of the following journals was conducted, and they investigated additional resources cited in references from the articles, the dissertation, and the books. So they ended up with 60 samples that they wanted to use. And they looked at the effect sizes. So if you find a difference between 2 different groups in a sample, the size of the difference is the effect size. If you have a correlation between 2 different constructs, the magnitude of the correlation, how big the correlation is the effect size. Okay? So then they talk about their results. So basically this is set up like an article that you would normally see with a regular sample of just people. And then they talk about different specific results. They have tables and stuff within their results, which when you do this for your paper, your table, you will have to do a table or a figure, will be at the end, just like it's supposed to be in APA style. So when they actually submitted this to this journal, they did put the tables in the end. Alright, that's the way they're supposed to submit it. Okay, and then they have a discussion. Again, this is set up like a regular APA paper. Their discussion is at the end, and they have all this information. And notice again, their discussion cites resources. Okay? And that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to talk about your findings, then talk about your findings in regards to the literature that you already have. You're going to have to do this in your discussion. A discussion has to talk about your findings. It has to state whether your hypothesis was supported or not supported. You're going to have to talk about your limitations and the future research. But before that, you'll talk about how the findings that you have will be put in the context of all the resources that you have. Okay? So you'll be citing some of your 6 articles, hopefully 3 to 4. That's what I'm aiming for. I want you guys to cite 3 to 4 of your studies should be able to be cited in the discussion. And then they have the references, which again, this isn't set up in APA. You would need a different page. So don't base your APA on how a journal article does it, because articles are different. See, this has a different way they set it up. This is set up in a different way. So don't base the way you do it. This is the same journal. Look. Journal of Vocational Behavior. Journal of Vocational Behavior. So it's the journal who bases the way they want to set up how everything is posted, but they all want them, the APA type journals, want these in APA style when you submit it to them for publication. Okay, so I hope all of this was a little bit more clear to you as you search for different journal articles. So again, we have the theory paper that's not going to have a study. We have the study paper that's going to have at least one type of study, but could have multiple. And then you have the meta-analysis that is basically taking these reviews and actually using the statistics to put together some sort of effect size for specific constructs that they want to discuss. So if you guys have any other questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. I hope this was helpful for you as you search, I hope, daily for your articles.